What's up, world? What's up, Ryan? It's Prince Easy coming at you again, once more, as usual. And in this particular video, we're gonna discuss the subject that we last left off pertaining to plasma. And in this video, it's gonna be pertaining to plasma and angels, right? So, before we get to the slides that we are gonna showcase here, I wanna issue a copyright disclaimer right for the copyrighted material that's gonna be in display in this here video, right? Under fair use, of course, right? So, last time we had a conversation about this and this, right? At least that's where we left off, right? That's where we left off. So, let's pick up from there, right? We said we're gonna have a read from the good book, right? And have some scientific understanding, as for the modern man likes to frame it, right? So, as I was preparing to make this video, here's how a shrimp escapes using vortices. Right, so two things that we have discussed the most here, right? Pressure, right? That's important. And also vortices. Okay, speaking of pressure, do you know this guy? Yeah, he is the Super Soaker inventor, right? The toy. He's still inventing apparently, and he made this machine here called the JTEC, Johnson's thermoelectrochemical converter, right? Basically that, right? Working on the same principle of pressure, just like the last guy who was expanding helium, right? In order to extract the energy, right? And he's doing the same thing here with this machine here, right? And you can see how everything is playing a part, right? Breaking apart the hydrogen under pressure, and of course vortices involved. And these are his right, nuclear, solar, coal, wind, fuel, JTEC by 2030, combined cycle GOS, right, geothermal, solar, wind, and of course by 2035 he believes that this tech would be everywhere, right? And it's quite impressive if you ask me, right? So all I'm saying is, even in art, right, it is being used, right? Even though this is very dangerous, because some people who are not careful with electricity have had let's just say negative consequences or unintended consequences playing with these toys here. And of course, speaking of angels, like I usually say here again and again, they usually tell you, right? They tell you what is going on, right? They tell you what is going on. So in this movie here, right, they tell you exactly what is what, the biggest secrets out there, but they tell you in a way that until you have things in perspective, you will not understand. What do I mean when I say perspective? Well, I think the imagery says for itself, right? He is trapped inside a watch, inside a glass case, right? And that's what I've been talking about. The watch, the first watch, is what the Creator made. The biggest timepiece to ever exist, most accurate. The sun, the moon, and the constellations, and their movement. That is the first clock. Before we superimposed whatever we have going on right now. Before time was hijacked, or rather the interpretation of time, right? Because this is a mental war. The glass part is also the firmament. So for those who understand, they understand. The sun tells you what time it is. The moon tells you what day it is, right? So the amount of days is determined by the moon. And of course the stars, what we now call the constellations. It all ties down to a belief, right? It's all a belief system. That's what space is, and people need to realize that, right? But people now are too asleep, I guess. But again, the world governments are keeping this tight, right? Because let's be real, even the whole conspiracy of Project Bluebeam, it's only possible, a hologram can only be projected under very interesting circumstances as of now. But do you know one of them is a vacuum? We live in a vacuum. So, when scriptures like this come about, right? Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of the Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Joshua? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and haste not to go down about a whole day, right? And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of man, for the Lord fought for Israel. Okay, this contradicts, right? In the true cosmology, which is the earth is a plane and it is stationary. The moon and the sun, these are the bodies that are moving. So it would make sense, right? But in a globe, this is a disaster. Ask them, right? Ask them what would happen if this were to happen on a globe. Okay, or from Isaiah, right? And this shall be a sign unto thee from the Lord, that the Lord will do these things that he hath spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of the degrees which is gone down in the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backward. So the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down. Okay, so again, proving how we read time in the past in Egypt, in India, right? There's ample proof on YouTube. You can look it up, right? We call them sundials, even in North America, even in South America, right? They had these sundials. Why? Because they knew they were stationary, okay, not moving and twirling around in space. No, the measurements will be wrong. Okay, so again, like I said many times, it depends on how you read the Bible. It's a spiritual book, it's a scientific book, it's a lot of things, a lot of philosophy, a lot of medicine, a lot of discovery, as we are gonna see, right? So this is the power that the Creator can bestow upon man, because man was given rulership of this world, right? And we're going to talk about it in the next video about transhumanism, right? Which is going to be pertaining to posthumanism, right? And this ideology, which is at its core antichrist, right? I don't want to get into it, but we're going to talk about it. So even these, right, this is a scripture that they chose to put, or he chose apparently himself to put in his stone, right? And if you don't know who that is, well, he's a head of NASA, right? One of the big shots of NASA, right? So he writes from Psalms 19:1, right? Psalms 19, right? 1, right? To the chief musician, Psalms of David. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork, right? This is, I don't know, his way to redeem himself from the big cover up. I don't know, okay, but I'm sure a lot of people were woken up by this, right? Emphasis on the firmament, and the meaning of the word firmament, it has one single meaning. It cannot be interpreted in other ways. But again, you have to remember we are talking about angels, right? Because in a way the Creator has chosen angels to be the way that he communicates with man, right? In the past up to this point, right? So it is important that we understand and we know what exactly does the scripture say about angels, right? And how can we understand in a modern context, right? Because again, the knowledge has increased. This is where we are, right? I remember also one of the latest NASA scientists to come from the moon, right? She said she had a very exceptional experience with the scripture after she came back. She had a appreciation, right? I believe she knew how deep she is in, and again she tried to redeem herself by trying to point the finger to where people can find the truth about creation. It's written, everything is written over there, that we live in a firmament, right? A domed structure, and above us there's water. Within there's dry land and there's water, and everything is inside. That's, you can't understand any form of science, any form of spirituality without understanding this. You are gonna get nowhere. Why? Because your foundation of reality is false, right? It is at this point malleable, right? If y'all knew that there's a firmament, there's definitely no aliens then. But they have to reinforce the idea that there are aliens out there, right? With movies like Disclosure, right? Every year they have these big movies, right? Harry Mary, right? All of these movies, they all have one common theme: escapism, right? We have talked about fallen angels and escapism. Why? Well, you have to watch the Groundhog Day. They give you a hint in there because the scriptures apparently were not enough, right? So in there they point out that yes, fallen angels are indeed trapped in here from their perspective, right? To us it is home. To them, because they do not belong here, right? They snuck around from heaven, they came down here, they perverted humanity. The angels, right? The angels, and their fingerprint is everywhere, from Atlantis then to Egypt, right? The Eye of the Sahara, that is the Atlantis, for you who don't know, right? The Eye of the Sahara, that is the Atlantis that is being infamous, right? To Egypt, all of these fallen angels are being worshipped, right? The birth of god kings, right? This is a phenomenon as old as that. All fallen angels. So their business is to try to escape, right? So if there's a firmament, then the Tower of Babel makes sense. If it is a globe, we live in a globe, the Tower of Babel does not make sense. Where were they going? Their plan was to pierce the firmament. Operation Fishbowl, right? Where they detonated nuclear bombs at high altitudes, they say, to learn about the ionosphere, so they say. No, but that was just their attempt to try to pierce the firmament, to try to escape. They have tried digging down, going up, piercing the firmament. Every day they do these rituals, right? The whole thing about Elon Musk and his Mars endeavors is all escapism. You tell me, even from a, I don't know, supposed objective perspective, what do you think space is about? What do you think propagates this conspiracy of space? Escape. We are running out of minerals. We need to start mining asteroids. We need to start looking for resources somewhere else, or else the humanity will implode on itself. You know, this fear, paranoia, right? The fear is real, but it's not human. Why? Because we accepted, right? We talked about this last time. We accepted the mindset of the fallen angels. We took their fear, their urgency, because truly time is running out for them. They have to find a way to escape, right? They talk about making black holes and portals and all of these. They're all, the common theme is they're all the same, right? It's all the same. Escapism, trying to escape. Now for those humans who are participating, well, I feel sad for them, right? Because knowing the truth, knowing for sure that this world was created, right? Like hands on the literal firmament, seeing it with your own two eyes, right? You cannot rationalize your way out of accepting that you live in a place that was created. Okay, not a product of evolution, because evolution falls apart. Okay, like I said, I think I tried to point out this, right? All of these events are connected, right? Space, evolution, the future of humanity. I don't want to spoil. Like I said, we're going to talk about it in post-humanism connected to transhumanism, right? At least how they define these two, right? And that would tell us what exactly they want to achieve. So again, escaping, right? The angels trying to escape what? Escape judgment, brothers and sisters. Escape judgment, right? Now people have taken up this spirit through various means. Star Wars. Stars are not distant luminary bodies and what. No. Enoch tells us a different story. The stars represent angels. The constellations are like angels marching. Exactly. That's the words that we are using, right? Just like a soldier marching in a parade. That's what the stars do around the so-called North Star, which does not move. They tell you that, but still people does not stick. Right? How can navigation be even possible? Like literally, if there's no fixed point. Right? It's crazy. Right? They tell you. How do they find you? They call it triangulation. Triangle. Right? Triangle. On a flat plane. Wake up. Okay, so let's get into the scriptures, like I say. So, like I said, it's important for us to understand angels, right? Because they are the middlemen, right, in the business of heavenly communication, right? So I'm gonna have a read, and we are gonna try to interpret, right, what is happening here, right? Now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the first month, fourth month, and the fifth day of the month, and say, as I was among the captives of the river of Sheba, right, that the heavens was opened, and I saw a vision of God, right? He was taken into a place to experience, right? Just like, I don't know, putting on your VR goggles. The same way, right? In the fifth day of the month, which was the fifth year of the king Joachim captivity, right? The word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Basil, in the land of Chaldeans by the river Chiba. And the hand of the Lord was there upon him. Right? First, you need to understand the language here. The Lord did not come himself. He sent a being. Right? The word of the Lord came. These are very exceptional words. Right? Everywhere that they're used, they mean that. An angel was sent expressly. That's an obvious clue to what they're talking about, right? That's what the angels do. they move back and forth from earth to heaven, right? That's another vision within the scripture that we are not going to talk about right now, right? So this angel was sent to Ezekiel, the priest, right, the son of Buzi, right? At least that's the Bantu way we read that, right? And of course, the hand, right, the hand of the Lord was upon him. That's another clue, right? So the word of the Lord, that's the first clue. The second clue is expressly, right, the movement. And the third, of course, is the hand, meaning angels. A messenger was sent, right? And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire unfolding itself, and a brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof, as a color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Okay, so this is what he is seeing now, right, in this vision, right? A whirlwind. You need to Google that, in order to have a mental picture, right? But it's like a small, I don't know, tornado, right? A small tiny vortex, right? And this is just a theme, just like the Israelites in the desert, they saw these pillars of fire, right? By day and by night, they were leading the way. So an angel was sent to lead them, okay, to lead them on the way that they were supposed to go, okay? And of course, the fire unfolding on itself, right? Just like the sun, right? A perpetually burning fire, right? It does not consume nor show any sign of weakening. Okay? Though they might try to scare you with the whole tactic of, the sun is actually darkening, it's dying. They have made movies about it, right? Can't believe no NASA. Okay, let's get back to it, right? So we already have displays of fire, a specific color, amber, right? So all of these are angels, how angels have appeared, forms that angels have taken, right? And this vision here is very exceptional because it is like a collage of all the possible forms angels have been allowed to take over the years, right? Heavenly angels, right? Any other different, then you know what it is, okay? So the opposite is okay. So fire, whirlwind, a cloud is also in the story of the Israelites in the desert. The cloud and the whirlwind were also present, one in the same, right? The same being standing on earth, expelling enough ions to cause the formation, or rather the crystallization of water molecules, causing the phenomenon we know as clouds. We shall talk about that maybe down the line, maybe some other day, right? Let's continue. Okay. Also, out of the midst thereof came like the likeness of 4 living creatures. Circling back to my point I made earlier about who exactly came to talk or to deliver this message to Ezekiel. So we're now getting a clearer picture, right? The 4 horsemen, as the world have come to fear them. Okay, but here they are being deployed in to perform another task. Okay, so the 4 living creatures, these are familiar, right? And this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. Okay, and everyone had 4 faces, and everyone had 4 wings, and their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they had sparkled like the color of burnished brass. Right, so they're telling you exactly how they look like. And they had hands of a man under their wings, and their 4 sides, and they had 4 and they had 4 had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another. They turned not when they went. They went everyone straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and the 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and the 4 also had the face of an eagle. Okay, so I think we have had a lengthy discussion about the appearances of angels, right? So I think this part or this portion here is self-explanatory, right? You can now digest Revelation correctly, right? When they say the 4 horsemen came before the throne of God, that means the angels were sent to do all of this, right? To put an end to the kingdom of darkness, right? So, of course, the likeness, the 4 faces of the angel, right? It's very specific angels, right? There are 4 of them, right? Man, ox, right? Now you can even understand the visions of the big images from the Sumerians, right? These beings with wings, right? Let me find some. Okay, the Egyptians were not exceptional, as you can see, right? Birds, serpents with wings, that's also an image from the scriptures, right? Felines and dogs and man, right? They look like man. All of these were the fallen angels in physical form, right? That's most important. Like I said, they were trapped here, right? Now you come to understand these guys, right? How do you know they were fallen? Well, it's easy, right? For instance, right, me being Michael, would it be appropriate for me to start building statues of myself, huge statues of myself? Would that in any way lead people to worship God? You understand now the difference, right? So these God kings, they directed all God's reverence towards themselves. Hence they made huge statues and made it law that they should be worshipped. Literally, law. And if you disobey this law, you get killed. Noahide law. At least that's what they're planning. Right? They have Chanel, the brand company, making guillotines. Right? I uploaded that video. They took it down quickly. Because I had the picture of the thing. Another so-called French Revolution. That's what they are planning. Because they need to stay relevant. So what? They are gonna throw you under the bath, in the bloodbath. Just like the French Revolution. It was a distraction. It wasn't any glorious or important event in Western civilization. No, from there everything went downhill. Okay? If you look at it really honestly, everything went downhill from there. When you took over from the niggers. So again, going back to knowing the difference, right? So if they direct reverence and worship towards themselves, you know that they are the fallen, right? And even any other god, which are the same, fallen, from many other civilizations out there. It be like that. There are many, and they demand, emphasis on the word that I'm using, demand worship. So yes, from what we see and what is left of Sumeria, that melanated civilization, they were destroyed, just like in the days of Noah. Again, Noah's story does not make sense in a globe, but if we are in an enclosed system, again, pressure, this dome here can fill up quickly. Right? Quickly, to a point where no peak of a mountain can be seen. And that is what Noah said. So yes, on a globe, a whole world flood is impossible. But if we live in a dome, in a firmament, very possible. So just like in the days of Noah, which was prophesied they are going to repeat again, they are going to try to destroy everything. Who are they? The angels, the fallen angels. So let's pick up from here, right? Of course, the face of a man, a lion on the right side, and a right ox on the side, on an eagle, right? You can discern civilizations by these descriptions here. If you want to find Lucifer, it's easy. If you want to find the devil, it's easy. Look for the imagery. Look for the imagery. Since they want to be worshipped, they create images, right? Why would I create an image of myself? Why? if I was sent here on a mission, right? I wouldn't want reverence to myself. The reverence would be to the one that sent me. So this is the differentiation here. One of them at least. Right? Because the nature of the angels from heaven and the so-called devil are the same, and the devil exists. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Okay? It's the real thing. Like a thing. Like a being, not a hypothetical, not like a, no. Just like me and you. They exist. Right? Now people have, I don't know, become so dumb to think of it like an allegory, you know. Okay. Alright? And the let's proceed from 12, right? And they went, everyone straight forward. Whither the Spirit was to go, they went. And they turned, not when they went. Okay? As for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire, and the appearance of lamps. It went up and down among the living creatures. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. Right? So, just like when Christ resurrected and he was having appearances to his believers, right? We have this historical account of tongues of fire going upon their heads. That's another image. Okay, so we have the four creatures and their wings and how they move, like I said, just like a military march, right? So it was just saying like these angels were not out of march, right? They were in lockstep with this burning tongue of fire, which was moving up and down. Okay, all of these images, scientifically, right, from a Scientology perspective, these are plasma events. These are plasma events, right, if you are catching on. Okay, because it's right there, right? The fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning. What type of fire is that? Again, knowledge has increased. But we know so little about plasma, so as we cannot even apprehend the so-called burning bush. Yeah. Okay. It goes on. And the living creatures ran and returned as the appearance of a flash of lightning. Okay, so them niggas was fast. Okay, now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with his four faces. The appearance of the wheels and their works was like unto the color of barley, and they four had one likeness, right? And their appearance and their work was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. Okay, another image given in other parts of the scripture pertaining to angels, right? The four creatures specifically, right? So a wheel within a wheel, the four creatures. Okay, another, like I said, this is gonna be a collage of all the forms that the angels have taken. So one form is also a wheel within a wheel. You remember that vision, a wheel within a wheel, and they had 6 wings, and all of these wings had eyes in them. They are describing the same thing, right? Archangel and cherubim, what's the difference? Archangel, okay, one is a being of lightning, okay, archangel, and the other is a description, a fiery, right? A fiery, it's the same thing, right? Fire and lightning, the same thing. So cherub and archangels, the same being. They just appear differently sometimes, right? When they come, as in this case of a wheel, they came with 6 wings, right? But you need to know like what they are describing and what they are saying. They are not two different things, right? Cherub and archangel, the same thing. Okay, that's why we don't have much of talk about cherubs, right? They are a class, right? But that's more of a description of what they are. Fiery, right? Even the devil is an archangel, but he takes another form, right? A serpent with wings on fire, right? A fiery serpent. Okay, and there's a consistency. Okay, there's a consistency with the forms. Again, they are allowed to take. Right, so we have now moved on from the 4 creatures. Now we are talking about the wheel within a wheel. That's another form within itself, right? Every one of these that we talked about, they can appear all together, like in this case, or separately, right? So in the Revelations, it's more like the 4 creatures on horses, right? Riding on horses. That was the image. Okay, and in other parts it's the wheel within a wheel, relevant to what was being delivered at that particular time, right? What the heavens wanted people to know. Okay, or sometimes it just mentions the name, a person called Michael, the archangel Michael, right? That's one particular appearance. Sometimes it's a lion, sometimes it's an eagle, sometimes it's an ox. The mission, right? And they went upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went, repeating that same speech from above. As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them 4. Okay, so again, he's being flooded with every alteration of how archangels have appeared to man, right? So the eyes now come in within the rings, right? Of course, it was a frightful thing, right? Just imagine seeing 2 rings one within each other, and within the rings there are eyes, and on top of that there's a whole wings. Right, talk about a watcher. Right, that's why my man say dreadful. Yes, that's why they have to start with do not fear. Right, but when they come as a man, it means like the Israelites going to war and finding a man across the road and ask him, Are you here to put an end to us or help us? And he just tells them, I'm just a chief from heaven. As simple as that. And that they never pick up again about what happened to the chief of heaven. But they were in war, right? They were participating in war. But I don't know, they picked them out in somewhere along the line, but left, enough is left to piece everything together. And then the four creatures went, and the wheels went by them, right? So there are two different things. And when the living creatures were lifted upon the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whatsoever the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was the Spirit to go. And the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the Spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those lifted upon the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the Spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Right? That repetition is important. Right? You see? It's important. They do it over and over. Connection between the Spirit and what he was experiencing, what he was seeing. Okay? So they repeat, for the Spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. For the Spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. And the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creatures was as the color of terrible crystal, stretched forth over their heads above. Right? So again, archangels, arcing what? Okay? As they were quote unquote arcing, they had formed crystals, pointy, I would suppose, above their heads. Okay? And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one towards the other. Everyone had two, which covered on this side, and everyone had two, which covered on that side, their bodies. Okay? Positioning of the wings, right? That was a mouthful, wasn't it? And when they went, I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of great waters, as above as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of speech, as the noise of an host. When they stood, they let down their wings. And there was a voice from the firmament that was over their heads. Right? When they stood, and they had let down their wings. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of sapphire stone, and upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness of the appearance of a man above upon it. And I saw as the color of amber, as the appearance of fire round about within it, from the appearance of his loins even upward, and from the appearance of his loins even downwards. I saw as it were the appearance of fire, and it had brightness right about it, round about, right? And the appearance of the bow that is the cloud in the day of rain. So was the appearance of the brightness round about. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when I saw it, I fell upon my face, and I heard a voice of one that spake. Okay, so just to have a cherry on top, right? They showed the throne of God at the end, right? So you can see now the difference. Okay, and what can be described as what and what. So that was a little lesson about archangels. Some cases, like the one that was sent to talk in the bush. Personally, I don't know who it was, but he was over the bush speaking from there, messenger, but not consuming the leaves. So that's what Ezekiel says. So since, just like they demonstrated, we live in a firmament, because this experiment would not be possible unless it is a vacuum. Now scale up this thing here, right? Scale up that dome above there to encompass all of the continents and everything that you have ever known, right? So under natural circumstance, the cloud can fall and of course is lifted and moved from place to place, right? So what do? They interfere with the whole process by introducing other competing broadcasts, let's call them that, right? Because there are many forms, right? So yeah, where did they learn this? Well, first they knew the truth, right? So if you are living on a globe, this experiment does not mean nothing. You are confident and sure that this cannot be translated into practical weaponry, so to say. And also, this makes sense. Okay, so welcome to like the real life Star Wars. So in the next video, we are gonna talk about the whole shenanigan of what these fallen angels have been up to over the many years they were stuck here, and why they were stuck here in the first place. Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna put a pin on this right here, and we're gonna conversate when we come about this subject again. So I'm gonna put a pin on it right there. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.